Just fear me, love me, do as I say, and I will be your slave.
Labyrinth was not a fairy tale. It was madness masquerading as fantasy. Beneath the glitter, the Goblin King, and the vast puppet kingdom, something lay beneath, madness in every shot. Jim Henson was ambitious, taking risks, and sometimes so dark that even he relinquished ideas too twisted to execute. The Goblin King himself nearly wasn't human at all, and the one character that ended up defining the film was based on a Hollywood legend nobody saw coming. What resulted was a tale the box office entombed in 1986, only to have time bring it back out into the world and reshape it as one of the greatest cult fantasies ever created. You don't leave a labyrinth. You get through. If this kind of story touches your heart, if you're someone who cares about truth, responsibility, and speaking up for the voiceless, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share it with someone who should hear it. Let's get started. The journey to Labyrinth hadn't started with fantasy. It started with bad dreams. Jim Henson, the master behind the Muppets, had already been working in darker, creepier narratives. Prior to the Goblin King and dancing marionettes, he'd been approached with projects that were more in the realm of horror. He even toyed with bringing Maurice Sendak's Where the Wild Things Are to life, but initial drafts turned out too threatening, too pointed. They seemed more like nightmares in children's clothing than the mixture of danger and enchantment he envisioned. Even Labyrinth itself, in its initial outlines, gravitated toward a much darker place. The goblins weren't silly or playful, monsters tearing out of shadows, more horror than fairy tale. Henson had always thought children needed to be challenged by stories. Fear, in his opinion, was an inciting spark to resilience. But he did not wish to bury his audience under the opportunity of fear. Rather, he aimed for balance. Laughter needed to coexist next to shadows, absurdity next to threat, whimsy next to peril. That equilibrium became the beacon by which Labyrinth was measured. It would not be safe, but it would not be despair either. It would tempt children to continue walking even when the road curled into impossible routes. But getting the balance right was another problem. The initial scripts of Labyrinth buckled under their own weight. Sarah, the protagonist, was a flat character, the goblins too dark, and the plot meandered without wit. That's when Jim Henson brought in Terry Jones of Monty Python. Jones's offbeat sense of humor became the lifeblood of the Labyrinth itself. He reimagined the world as a realm in which riddles undercut themselves, in which guards bickered over reason, and even the stone walls sneered at Sarah. His hand imbued the labyrinth with personality. It was not mere maze, but living, winking, unpredictable. The eventual script would still be redone by several writers, but Jones's presence was felt throughout, providing a rhythm that had menace and humor walk together hand in hand with each shot. And then there was the Goblin King. Initially, he wasn't human at all. Initial ideas had him as yet another complex puppet of Henson's creature shop. But Henson became anxious. With that many puppets already filling up the movie, the narrative required a compelling human figure, someone who could ground the bedlam. Names floated around: Michael Jackson, at the peak of his fame, eager to expand into film; Mick Jagger, still dangerous and alluring; Sting, beloved and brooding. All were considered. But what Henson truly needed wasn't just a pop idol. He needed someone who embodied the confusing magnetism of adulthood itself, unsettling, seductive, and impossible to ignore. The answer was David Bowie. With his otherworldly charisma, glam rock strangeness, and theatrical presence, Bowie transformed Jareth into more than a villain. He became temptation itself, the embodiment of danger and desire waiting at the heart of the labyrinth. No puppet could have carried that weight. No one else could blur the line between dream and nightmare the way Bowie did. Clearly, Bowie required a foil, someone capable of standing up to her. The heroine, Sarah, would be the character that would encapsulate the movie. Jim Henson sought out an actress who embodied innocence and resolve, someone torn between childhood imagination and grown-up terror. Up-and-comers came in for auditions: Helena Bonham Carter, Sarah Jessica Parker, Marissa Tomei. Each of them contributed something, but none seemed to fit perfectly. Then arrived Jennifer Connelly, a mere 14 years of age. She wasn't the loudest or the most well-known, but she had a quiet strength and fragility that made her ideal. Henson selected her, and it was the choice that rooted the movie. Connelly's Sarah provided Labyrinth with its emotional center. Without her innocence and determination, Bowie's Goblin King could have swiped the entire film. Henson wasn't operating in isolation. Behind him, George Lucas, just off the success of Star Wars. Lucas was more than a money backer. He was in the trenches, going over storyboards, cutting, and refining structure. Where Henson contributed imagination and puppetry, Lucas contributed blockbuster sensibilities and attention to detail. It was an odd couple, a felt and foam dreamer paired with a pragmatist who constructed galaxies out of cardboard models. Together, they created something new. Lucas's name put studios at ease that this wasn't any puppet show for kids. It was a serious movie, gutsy enough to hold its own alongside the largest fantasies of the decade. From the very first instant Labyrinth broke rules, its first shot, a swooping owl, was one of the first completely computer-generated animals in motion picture history. It appears quaint now, but in 1986 it was revolutionary. It was wooden in its rendering, the animation primitive, but it held together. It informed viewers they were entering a tale in which advanced technology and handcrafted craftsmanship would intersect, and collide they did. Henson's Creature Shop produced more than 100 goblins for the movie. No two were identical. Each possessed quirks, crooked teeth, floppy ears, mismatched eyes, peculiar hats. Puppeteers bestowed them with small improvisations and gestures, bringing even background goblins to life. That manic attention to detail invested the Labyrinth with its depth. The practical effects of the film became the stuff of legend. One indelible moment was the shaft of helping hands, foam rubber palms shaping themselves into mouths that talked. More than 100 performers operated within the rig, synchronizing movements and expressions. The end product was touchy, unsettling, and indelible. Another notorious sequence, the fire ease, almost destroyed the crew. Black-clad puppeteers operated against black velvet to disappear on screen while manipulating limbs, heads, and props. Weeks of meticulous labor were spent creating a scene that appeared frolicky but had required ruthless accuracy. The world of the movie wasn't contained within its maze. However, its creation started within Sarah's bedroom. All the details hinted at what was to come. A toy Ludo on the shelf, a doll of Sir Didymus, a burning toy, goblin bookends, even a photo album depicting her mother posing with David Bowie blurred fantasy and reality. Henson ensured the maze wasn't simply an alien environment, it was Sarah's imagination brought to life. And then there was the music. David Bowie did more than act Jareth. He voiced him in song. From the light-hearted charm of Magic Dance to the beautiful ballad As the World Falls Down, Bowie's music held the film together. Even the Johnny chant, You Remind Me of the Babe, was a wink to Cary Grant's 1947 screwball comedy The Bachelor and The Bobby Soxer. Bowie made Jareth a rock star, a trickster, and a seducer all rolled into one. Naturally, audiences saw more than the music. Bowie's costumes, glam rock boots, flowing capes, and those notorious tight pants were cultural water cooler fodder. To this day, fan forums, memes, and even scholarly essays argue about whether his fashion choices were a clever distraction or just Bowie being Bowie. In either case, his persona seared itself into the legacy of the film. But even Bowie's otherworldly crystal ball juggling wasn't his own work. That sleight of hand was Michael Moschan's, an international master juggler who huddled behind Bowie, eyes closed to the stage, using muscle memory to roll spheres across his fingers. The illusion was so convincing that people thought Bowie himself ordered the magic. The puppets were also intricate. Hoggle, for example, needed one actor inside the costume and 5 outside controlling the animatronic head. His dialogue was provided by Brian Henson, Jim's son. They collectively brought the grumpy, dutiful goblin to life. Decades later, the original puppet was discovered rotting in storage. Its latex had deteriorated into something grotesque. Even in tatters, Hoggle remained unforgettable. Not everyone was enchanted. Maurice Sendak claimed Labyrinth plagiarized his book outside over there. Production was temporarily threatened until Henson offered to give credit to Sendak. The conflict reminded people that even fantasy lands have origins in other stories. In the background, other surprise names define the movie. Gates McFadden, eventually Dr. Beverly Crusher on Star Trek, The Next Generation, worked as choreographer, setting up both the ballroom scene and the mischievous magic dance. Her influence gave the dances a sense of coming from the characters naturally. Henson's crew even inserted Bowie's face